Michael Malice has turned into what he thinks is an anarchist, which is very offensive to somebody like myself who actually sort of associates himself with that movement, the Bakunin sort of anarchist movement. We'll play a bit of it, but I want to respond to some of these points, because this is, when I talk about co-opting movements, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the rich business class co-opting a left-wing worker movement, is exactly what this is. He's even dressed like he's a... Hate that you made me watch this.
Poor Michael Malice.
Oh,
he gets no love.
Guy.
So, like...
No, so hang on. Just he's dressed like that. This is like a special show, and they were putting on they're putting on costumes. He's got the North Korea. He's not a fan of North Korea. And then Lex is dressed as like a Soviet soldier or something.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
sort of.
Won't every...
Okay, so that's right. That's progressive economics.
Yeah.
So the argument is, in any market, at a certain point, things tend to centralize, and then that organization de facto can dictate price, can dictate so on and so forth. That is completely ahistorical.
So that's completely... The monopolization forces in capitalism is ahistorical. Interesting. So why would they need to create antitrust laws, if that's the case? Does he say more about this?
If you look at any market, the trend is always towards decentralization. The music industry, right? When we were kids...
The only thing he cites are internet-based companies where the commons were fenced. I mean, this is complete misunderstanding of everything.
And he leaves out Jeff Bezos.
He's talking about
not only has he's monopolized multiple markets.
He's trying to talk about the music industry here as a well, this would be an exception to the rule if this were the case, but it's not even true. What he's talking about is not even true. I looked it up. Spotify has completely fucking taken over the music industry. Here's the Rolling Stone. The record industry gave everything away to Spotify. Could it change its mind? They've monopolized everything. Spotify's monopolized the entire music industry.
Yeah.
Now, you can still have independent artists, but this is it. Why would they need antitrust laws? Why,
Yeah.
It's just such a misunderstanding of economics.
And it's not even a misunderstanding of economics. It is a purposeful ignorance.
It has to be a lie
of just the facts on the ground. I can't. So he's a
just look at Amazon. Look at all the companies they purchased in the last decade.
Yeah. It's this whole, it's the myth of meritocracy. That, well, if you build a better mousetrap, if you have a better product, then you're just naturally going to get ahead, and you just keep working hard. And sometimes that does happen. But the system really is rigged against you. And there are certain protections in place, antitrust laws, monopoly laws, that allow a very small sliver of room for new companies to develop and emerge and to get a market share. And I mean, even with it, it's almost impossible for a new company to rise up. I mean,
well, if they do rise up, they get purchased. I mean, that's what, Facebook bought Instagram, they bought MySpace. I mean, that's what happens. This is capitalism. But even the examples that he cites are even just factually incorrect. For example, the music industry. Oh, he also mentions in this clip here that technology is a function of free enterprise. Like, no, technology is, for the most part, designed in state-run facilities, like, colleges.
Yeah, I mean, but that one, you can argue it, but well, once again, it's nuance. There's a lot of technology that's developed in state-funded universities, labs. Certainly, most of it done with tax money, state money. But yeah, I mean, market forces do drive innovation, and they do drive developments of new technology. But
they develop fucking vacuum cleaners. They don't develop the internet. All right. Here is the second clip I wanted to play from this horrific travesty of He even steals the frickin' anarchist sign for this anarcho-capitalism BS.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
And Murray Rothbard points out that state is the only agency in a country which gets its goods through force. The state is the only agency that is not a producer, but inherently a parasite because it does not get its money voluntarily, but through taxation and by imposing its values on a country. That is what makes a state uniquely different from, let's suppose, an Amazon or a Barnes & Noble or a Target. Jeff Bezos does not have the authority or the moral legitimacy to get an army and go into somebody's house, whereas Andrew Cuomo or Ron.
Well, in his society, he wouldn't need the authority or legitimacy. He just needs the army, and that's the big problem with this whole thing. You accrue enough wealth like that, and
he's characterizing taxes as force. This is what libertarians do.
Yeah, it's oh my god, it's
taxes are
raging.
Taxes are legally the government's. They're not stolen by force. They're the government's legally. That's what democracy is. The government redistributes wealth. That's their entire role in society, to make sure people aren't starving on the streets. Because rich people won't help out the poor unless they have to. That's what taxes is. Without that safety net, there is no society. There is the French Revolution, okay? Taxes are not stealing. Taxes are redistributing wealth.
So, I get the argument that taxation is taxation is theft from an individual under the threat of force. It's
definitionally
not,
it's just not.
Yeah, it would be theft, but it would be it's hey, you have to pay this money, James. You made X amount of dollars, and 20, 30%
your employer
of
has
that.
to give it to the government before you ever see that money. For one.
Yeah, but it's money that you earned. It's money that you earned, and a portion of that needs to go towards the government. Okay, well then, consumption tax then. Consumption tax. I go buy something, I have to pay 6% of my money. Well, what if I don't want to pay that 6%? Well, you have to pay that 6%.
Then live somewhere.
What if I don't want to?
You live in a society. There are things there are costs.
We do live in a society,
and there are benefits.
Yeah, and no, so I get that, and I get that. Yeah, that ultimately it comes down to force. It is, hey, if you don't pay this money, somebody at some point along the line, somebody's going to come to your house with a gun and say, you're going to pay your taxes, we're going to throw you in a cage. And I'm okay with that, because the inverse of that is also theft. So if, I've got 10 people that live on my road, and Tony wants to say, well, if you tax me, that's theft. Okay. I stopped paying my taxes, but I keep using the roads. I keep driving down the street
You're
that they paid for.
The food stamp recipients who aren't able to get the food stamps.
I keep getting my electric from electric poles that were run down this road with their taxes. Okay, so now I'm stealing from them. And either way, if we want to have a functioning society, we have to have these programs work somehow or another. And you can make the argument either way that it's theft. And I don't like to oppress the minority, but I think in this situation it's just a pragmatic one. There's a handful of people that want to be sovereign citizens and libertarians and anarchists, and they don't want to pay it. Some of them just I don't know the motivations. Yeah, generally it's people that already have plenty of money, so they're not worried about it.
Also,
and it just can't work like that. You're going to end up stealing from us. Now, I would like to have some sort of opt-out. An opt-out for people like that. Maybe we set aside like one part of a state. Okay, now you're going to pay an X amount of dollars, or we're going to do like a toll system. And you don't ever have to pay taxes again. But we're going to charge you the cost to do all these things, and don't ask for any Social Security, don't ask for any Medicare, don't ask for any subsidized food, any social program that we're paying into.
Still being subsidized through carbon taxes. They're still being subsidized by not paying the cost of destroying the planet.
Yeah, I mean,
nitty gritty about it, but
yeah, there would be a lot to work out, and obviously it probably wouldn't work, but Yeah, I don't know. I would just like to give these people an opportunity to just, hey, go do
Give
that.
them Texas.
By the way, you don't have any worker protections either. You know,
Give them Texas.
Give them Texas. I'm down with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I just want to point out the inherent fallacy of assuming that the employer-to-employee relationship is not a relationship of force. You can't tell me a worker that can't feed his family is forced into taking your shitty job, capitalist. That is force too. Starving people is force. I'm sorry, it just is. Just because you're wealthy doesn't mean that everybody else in the world is. Most people aren't.
Yeah. But James, don't you know most people only live on $5 a day anyway? So if you're making $30,000 a year, you're in the top 10% of the entire world. What are you crying about?
I'm crying because the standard of living in the United States is going down in the richest country in the history of the planet.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
Okay. Next clip.
But
Share my screen.
Are we still on Lex Fridman?
Oh yeah, we're still on.
Okay. Oh yeah.
I'm saying is there's one essential difference, which is taxes are imposed on you and you have no choice. Here's an example. My book, Ego and Hubris, my biography, it goes for $500 on eBay. Someone paid for it, some crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
So people were showing me that it's on Amazon for $3,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could put $1 million for it. You could charge whatever price you want. The question is someone paying that $3,000 for it? Is someone paying that $1 million for it? And if it's actually the buyer who establishes the price, because the seller can put any price tag he wants, $80 trillion, but unless someone's paying that amount and clearing the market, that price has literally no real meaning, right? It's not an indicator of value or worth or market price. Taxation, on the other hand, is by fiat. I can decide it's fair that you, Lex, have to pay 40% and Joe has to pay 45%. Mm-hmm. Joe and Lex are in no position to be like, this price is too high. That not only is that money, set just completely out of their hands, it's for people who are employees, it's taken out of their paychecks before they even see it.
Yeah.
So in this clip, he is talking about how you have no choice to pay your taxes.
Correct. Because there's no way for you to live in this society without taking advantage of what people that are fine with paying their taxes have built. If there were a way to do it, we already.
Well, first of all, he says that he says in this clip that the capitalist market, quote unquote, can provide goods better and cheaper, because he's talking about prices here. He's saying the capitalist market can provide goods and services cheaper than the government. That's just factually incorrect. You look at any country that has nationalized health services, the services are cheaper, they cover everyone, and the outcomes are better. Cuba has better health outcomes than the United States. Also, he says that if you have to pay 45%, God forbid, which is the lowest frickin' tax rate in history. Well, 37 is what it is now, but God forbid a trillionaire have to pay that. He does have a say. He has one vote. He's one person. How many votes should he get?
Yeah.
That's the flaw with capitalism. You have one vote per dollar? No, you have one vote per person. You're a person just like everybody else in the society. Just because you benefit that much more doesn't mean you get more votes in the society.
Agreed. I don't know how they, like, what's the end goal? What does society look like for that?
I showed you the picture of it. It's Jeff Bezos on the moon.
Jeff Bezos on the moon, yeah.
While the earth is on fire. Telling everybody to fuck you. That's the end goal of capitalism.
Yeah, in theory, the problem, you end up running into a lot of contention over this, because there's how things could work in theory and how things tend to work in practice. In theory, the government can do exactly what Frito-Lay's does, make potato chips. They could make potato chips exactly the same way with the exact same cost for labor, overhead, potatoes, everything, except they don't have to account for profit. All right. So in and of itself, there's that giant extra cost, whatever Frito-Lay's profit is going to be, that is not necessary for a government-run industry to produce. Now, we know that governments tend to be, at least in the U.S., and there's certain reasons why it is, but they tend to be kind of bloated with bureaucracy, and they are not able to function as efficiently as they could. I think the point would be is, hey, if we have this engine over here that has the potential to run smoother, then let's just fix it so that it runs smoothly and not just throw it out and say, well, we'll use the currently more efficient model, which we know is not going to run efficiently, is not going to run any more efficient than it is.
I think to that I would say, things that are inefficient in our government have been made that way in order to give companies, for example, the post office has made it horribly inefficient because they privatized the package delivery services, handed off to UPS, handed off to FedEx, and now the post office just has to deal with it. It's the same thing with obviously with healthcare. I mean, you could make it vastly more efficient if you got rid of the Obamacare crap that left these private insurance companies hanging around making a huge profit. I mean, in a lot of ways, it could be much more efficient, I should say.
Yeah. Isn't it weird how the party that always talks about how inefficient, bloated, and bureaucratic the government is also the one that pushes for the government to be inefficient, bloated, and bureaucratic? They're always the ones adding in those little tweaks of the law. Well, we're going to make you do all these more hoops, and well, you have to buy, you got to buy your services or your products from this company, and they're going to get a no-bid contract, and they can charge whatever they want.
People I think of the government as a kind of subscription service.
No, that's the anarchist view. The anarchist view of private security would be a subscription service. So that's exactly correct.
But everyone hates when you sign up to a gym and then you realize in the contract it's very difficult to cancel that membership, and then they up the price. I mean, there's a lot of unpleasant things with a subscription service that then you can elect to go to another subscription service.
Sure. Or you could go on Yelp and complain, and if there's enough people do that, the gym will be receptive. Look at the.
You can go to Yelp and complain. We're going to control the capitalist market's inefficiencies and just harming of human beings with Yelp reviews.
Okay, Amazon ups their Amazon Prime subscription price by $50, and you've got 1 million people that go on Yelp and complain about Amazon. Does it hurt their bottom dollar one single bit? Once you.
How about the building manufacturers who built the building in Florida that collapsed? Go give them some negative Yelp reviews. You think it fucking matters to the 150 people who were killed? Of course not. The company who built the building is out of business 20 years ago. They don't care. Yeah, they're gone. Yeah, Capitalists got the money and left. Businesses are gone. This is
Dave Rubin levels of stupidity right here.
Yelp reviews.
I can't even, I'm trying to think of an industry where, obviously these market forces work. If someone produces a bad product, at a certain point in time, people are going to realize it's a bad product. Now, generally that only happens. First off, you have to be able to know about it. So if Amazon starts doing crappy stuff, let's say in 10 years from now where they own half of U.S. media, well, they just buy Yelp. They just buy the news. Nobody's talking about this stuff. The information has to get out there, first off. People have to care. People have to have another choice.
People have to research every freaking thing they do in their entire life because nobody can be trusted. No company can be trusted because there's no oversight.
And these market forces have to, first off, they're not going to work that quickly. And oftentimes these things aren't found out about until years, decades later.
Look at freaking lead paint.
Look at OxyContin. Purdue Pharmaceuticals was pushing out this stuff to doctors, convincing them or not convincing them, just buying them off, to put these highly, highly addictive substances and just prescribe them like crazy. They end up having to pay some money, but they made away like bandits. And I don't know who the CEO, who the board of directors were back then, but I guarantee that they're already, this was in the 90s. They're retired. They're gone. They got their paychecks and they're done.
The people
do end
on
up
that
having to-
board got paid. The company
Yeah.
might go under. Who cares? The people on the board of directors got paid.
And they didn't even go. They had to pay. I mean, it was a few $100 million, I believe. They had to pay that out. But imagine how much damage they did. How many people's lives were lost. I mean, the epidemic of opioids in the country today. If you added up, if you totaled the cost of the opioid epidemic in the U.S., any contractor.
There has to be oversight. You can't trust a freaking capitalist corporation to do the right thing. They get paid no matter what.
Yeah, or that somebody's just going to find out that, Dave Rubin brought this up on Joe Rogan. Well, you get a housing contractor and he builds your house, and it's a crappy house, and everybody finds out about it, and they don't use that guy anymore. Well, yeah, you're not going to find out about that. The guy could make his
still
money.
Fall down.
Yeah, and it might not fall down until 5, 10, 15 years later.
Right, exactly.
This guy, he's done everything. This is a classic snake oil salesman. You come into town, you make all these grandiose claims about your product, you sell it to everybody, then you move on to the next town. And
yep. We had that. That was the Wild West. Did we try it?
Yeah, it was literally the Wild West. Yes, we did try it. And
we had anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah, and that's something else they don't seem to understand. These things exist all over the world. There's essentially lawless, self-governed regions where
1890s.
There are industries there, and things are not going well for the people there.
That's why we had the New Deal, because it fell apart.
The whole idea that you can pay subscriptions for this thing and subscriptions for that thing, and you can pay for your own private police and your own private ambulance, and you don't have to. And,
yeah, you have the
you're going to have the extra money because we're not going to be taking out taxes, but then you don't have a structure in place to guarantee that you get paid.
The lowest quintile doesn't pay taxes. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
it's progressive taxation.
But they are making these assumptions that, we can move things around and make it work in this way, but the things that they're moving around only exist in the society, in the structured society we have today.
Jeff Bezos is only rich because of the society that he's a part of, the things he benefited from.
I mean, but even the pay scales that we have today only exist because of the government that we have. Somebody making $50,000 a day, if you get rid of labor protections and minimum wages, and these companies can just do what they want, those jobs are going to disappear. They're going to find somebody to pay less.
He's got to pay for his own fire department. He's got to pay for his own freaking police. He's got,
Look, I say anarchism can be summed up in one sentence. You do not speak for me. Everything else is application. So the claim that somebody I've never met or who I voted against, let's say, I hate Donald Trump, I despise him, I want Hillary Clinton to be president. Too bad Trump's your president. But that's not what I want. Yeah. The idea that this person can come on me and make any claims onto 1 second of my time, as opposed to trying to persuade me, that is something that I, an anarchist, regard as inherently evil and nonsensical.
But to operate large organizations, like you
yeah,
he doesn't want anyone to tell him what to do. That's why he's an anarchist. Like, for example, his boss. He forgot about that part. Yeah, nothing hierarchical about the employee-employer relationship, is there?
Could you imagine the amount of time it would take to live in the society that he's proposing, where you're having to negotiate and look at Yelp reviews for every single police force and look at Yelp reviews to find a place that sells milk that isn't tainted with lead?
And wrong, because I'm not in an informed position. So what democracy does is it forces people who run businesses well to run businesses poorly by people who don't know how to run businesses at all. That's one of the many concerns.
But you're saying that's the fundamental property of the state. I have a sense that the state could become as effective as what we think of as companies. I mean,
this is why they can't, because the state does not have access to data the way that firms do.
This is so ridiculous. He's so full of it. The state can't be as efficient as companies because they have data? Are you telling me Amazon doesn't the government can't have access to the same data Amazon has?
Are you telling me the NSA doesn't have servers on servers on servers of data on every single person living in the U.S.? They certainly, yeah.
These companies are the size of many governments. Amazon is larger than many world governments. You're telling me Amazon doesn't centrally plan what they do? Give me a break, dude. They centrally plan. That's what they do. That's what companies do. They just have a huge profit margin.
I mean, what data is he even talking about? Sales data?
He doesn't know.
On certain products? I mean, if the government were dealing in that industry and were providing that service to that product, I'm sure they would keep data on that stuff. You know, we have data on ambulance runs, for example. I mean, a lot of ambulances are private now, but the ones that are, they keep data on all that stuff. Anything that they're involved in, they're keeping the data on.
Amazon and Apple are wealthier than more than 90% of the world's countries. So they already are basically governments. I mean, that's what they are. They centrally plan their operations. They don't help people. They just collect money and grow interest on it. All right, here's a point he makes about private security versus the police. He's trying to defend this somehow.
Example that people can wrap their heads around very easily. I'm against government police monopoly. I'm for private security, right? You don't have to be an anarchist to understand this. Can everyone agree, or at least as a hypothesis, everyone can wrap their heads around, here's a big concern, 911, right? I've heard this 911 call, it's very chilling. There's a kid in a closet, his family's being murdered outside, right? He has to call 911, he's whispering. It's horrifying to hear. There's no reason why the number I call for my family's being murdered is the same number I call for the fire department, is the same number I call for an ambulance. What if instead it operated like Uber? You had buttons on your phone. If there's a real emergency, like someone's gun fires, someone's being killed, you press this, and it sends, instead of the one police district, whatever company is nearby, you have a bunch of them, and they're the ones who are going to come to your house.
What do you think about that? Is that a good idea?
Okay, there is a reason that it's all the same. First off, there is a reason it's all the same number. It's because you only have to remember one number. You don't have to buy a phone that has a bunch of different
You have to have a phone, first of all.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily... I mean, I don't know.
It's so stupid.
There are a lot of reasons that you dial one number. You know, if you have a fire, you might need an ambulance. Well, and you're not calling separate companies. Hang on. You're not... It's not... It is the exact same thing as what he's talking about. Well, there could be several companies nearby that provide these services, and you call the one you need. You have the exact same thing.
It's there first.
Yeah, you have a police station here, you have an EMT station there, you have a fire department there.
Well, they're going to check you better have a valid credit card, or you're not going to get service.
Yeah, and you're going to call dispatch. They're going to send it out to the correct one, or probably multiple. You know, if you got a fire and there's people injured, if somebody...
Sir, you're overdrafted. We're not going to be able to service you right now.
Could you imagine? Hey, and there's no government to step in and protect against that, to make legislation saying that
I think competing private militias is a great idea.
Yeah,
police.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole after you and I talked about this the other day, and there's a debate between him and this libertarian, Yaron Brook, I believe.
Oh, yeah. And, Yaron's pretty famous.
Yeah, and Yaron was just like, man.
He's one of the better ones.
You're taking it too far.
Libertarian debaters go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry.
I think government gives a opportunity for companies to outcompete it.
Yes.
So
UPS, FedEx, 100%, not a question.
So
ridiculous. We already discussed this. The FedEx and UPS were granted these profitable parts of the postal service, so they could basically make more rich people. The postal service was fine and profitable prior to that.
Anybody right now can do this. If you can make a delivery courier service that's cheaper than USPS.
Not only that, I mean, it's not only they just didn't give it to them, they also subsidize these companies. Here's Subsidy Tracker for, what is this for, UPS?
UPS.
Yeah, UPS. 230 million subsidies, state and local, 1.6 million federal, 367 state and local grants, so they got grants, multiple grants in every state. They're heavily, heavily subsidized by the taxpayers to make a profit off of a service that the United States Postal Service already did. This type of stuff is going on in every industry.
Every single industry.
This is redistributing wealth upwards. That's exactly what this is doing. People just don't realize it. Oh, here's another one I wanted to point out. FedEx is a serial tax dodger. The world's largest express transportation company is also quick and nimble at dodging taxes. Some of its windfall goes to lobbying for spending cuts and other policies that hurt ordinary taxpayers. FedEx made $6 billion over the last 3 years and didn't pay a dime in federal income tax. How surprising. Seems fair to me. But it's all USPS. It's all their fault because they suck, right?
Oh, I'm sorry to say, but I have a sense that there needs to be a bit of a safety net for freedom.
I'm much more comfortable with saying you need a safety net for freedom than you need one for entrepreneurs. The beauty of markets is with your startup. If you have a startup and it completely fails, the only person who's screwed is you and your investors. Mm-hmm. If I'm a government and I make a startup, the entire society fails, like the Iraq War, right? If I have this cockamamie plan, everyone else doesn't have a choice. They are both funding it and sometimes even drafted or forced into it, right? The safety net.
Okay, so I'm not even clear on what his point was there. He's talking about the Iraq War and entrepreneurs. Did you understand what he was saying?
Yeah, I think he's making a point about just private. He's conflating two very different things. So that was the point I was making. Is startups, government startups, as in trial programs, trial social programs. Hey,
like ARPANET?
What's that?
Like ARPANET or what? What's he talking about?
I don't know what he's talking about.
University research?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's just trying to conflate, like.
He said he doesn't want a safety net for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for private, but because government startups are like the Iraq War.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's what. Well, I think he was also, if I remember correctly, they were talking about the government picking winners and losers. So
okay,
he's against government subsidies, and maybe that's the point he was making is that the government doesn't need to be stepping in and giving businesses money, because if the business fails, then everybody didn't voluntarily give their money to help start up that business, but they did end up losing out on that tax revenue. I mean, there's an argument to be made there, and I partially agree. I don't like tax subsidies going to companies like FedEx. I do like that for Amazon, because it's in that situation they win, but we lose. I do like the idea that we have tax subsidies for small businesses to start up.
Sure.
Because whether we win or lose, just the fact that those resources are available to people, I think it's going to end up, it pays off more in the long run over a number of businesses than it does, just because they end up losing money here and there.
Okay, next point here, we're almost through this.
Wouldn't that be a huge step forward if war instead of regarded? This is what drives me crazy. We're taught as kids in school that war is a last resort, and I agree with that. And yet, when you look at the corporate press, war is always the first response. And these people do not talk about what war means. They'll show examples during the Bush years of soldiers coming home in caskets, which already is an unacceptable price in many cases for me. But they don't even pretend to care about the people overseas whose countries we've ransacked. And
oh shit. The problem with the anarcho-capitalists making this argument is we have the wars because of capitalism.
And the
military-industrial complex lobbies the government to start these wars. That's why we have them. It doesn't seem to understand that. The citizens don't want to invade frickin' Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, and I think in the society he's envisioning, this should be something that everybody's okay with and everyone votes on. And, why would somebody like him who's anti-war have to have his tax dollars going to doing something like that? But he advocates for private military forces, private armies, all these things. And
it'd be Jeff Bezos invading Afghanistan instead.
Okay, well, your money isn't going to pay for it, but it's still happening. And it doesn't have any democratic control. The only people that have the thing is, in the society we live in now, the people that are anti-war have a say in whether or not the war goes on, whether it continues, and their sentiment is taken into account, even if they're not okay with it. If you have these private armies, the only people whose mouths or the only people whose voices are going to be listened to are the people that are in favor of it. And so it's this constant push for that war machine, and then everybody has to still suffer the deleterious effects of it.
I had a couple of points in conclusion just about this anarcho-capitalism, also known as libertarianism. It's the same crap. He's just grifting off of the left here. The Libertarian Party is funded by right-wingers like the Koch brothers. These are think tank guys. For example, Euron that you mentioned earlier. You can look at pure capitalism or anarcho-capitalism in countries like Haiti, where the U.S. imposes a free market by dictatorship. The dictator is used to suppress democracy in that country. And democracy, i.e. redistribution. This is anarcho-capitalism, basically, with a dictator enforcing it. We can look at Pinochet in Chile, Bolsonaro in Brazil sort of did the same thing. That's why the Amazon rainforest is pretty much dead. A couple of years before he was convicted of securities fraud, Martin Shkreli was the chief executive of a pharmaceutical company that acquired the rights to Daraprim, a life-saving anti-parasitic drug. Previously, the drug cost $13.50 a pill, but in Shkreli's hands, the price quickly increased by a factor of 56 to $750 a pill. At a healthcare conference, Shkreli told the audience that he should have raised the price even higher. No one wants to say it, no one's proud of it, he explained, but this is a capitalist society, a capitalist system, and capitalist rules. It's just one example. We also had an example a few weeks ago, the EPA being paid off by the chemical industry. The same sort of thing. It's like, so.
To be fair, though, I don't know how. I don't think that Haiti would be an example of the society. I think the fact that Haiti has a dictatorship would kind of remove it from, by definition, from what he's trying to talk about. What he would say is an anarcho-capitalist society.
Well, without the dictator, there wouldn't be no anarcho-capitalism. People would organize and exert democratic forces.
Well, I would say without the dictator, there'd be no. And I don't know how their economy's set up, but I mean, I guess it's incredibly laissez-faire free markets there. But anarcho-capitalism is a political organization, a way to politically organize society, and a way to run the economy in one. And with places like Haiti or Somalia, you're getting one part of it. You're getting the economic side, where you don't have the protections and social programs, but you don't have the societal setup where everyone is operating on a free level and on the same level, and it's all about consent, and there's no force.
Well, in anarcho-capitalism, there's no state. There's no state to enforce the rules, and then the person with the most money just takes over and becomes a dictator. Yeah,
I agree. I think that's
advocates some sort of political structure that I'm not aware of, but
no, he advocates no political structure. Okay. That's the point, is that there is no dictator, but that in it, once you create an anarchist society, this is how you should organize the economy based on just purely free markets.
In these banana republics, the whole point of the dictator is to keep people from nationalizing the industries and make sure the money keeps flowing back to the United States.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's got the free market side. It just doesn't have the anarchists.
What is anarchism? Anarchism really is libertarian socialism. This is a very old tradition going all the way back to Bakunin, who was around the same time, writing at the same time Marx was. Yeah. So here is a clip from a real anarchist about anarchism. Not specifically the political structure or the economic structure, but just the basics here by Noam Chomsky.
Anarchism has nothing to do with bomb-throwing mayhem. Anarchism is a point of view which, first of all, it covers a lot of things. Political rhetoric is not the clearest, it's not a model of clarity, and anarchism has covered quite a lot of ground. But the mainstream of it has just been the basic principle, which I think comes straight out of classical liberalism and the Enlightenment, that any form of authority and domination has a burden of proof to bear. It has to demonstrate that it's legitimate. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's inside a family or the global economy. If it is a form of authority and domination and coercion, it has to show that it's legitimate. If it can demonstrate it's legitimate, it's a heavy burden to bear. If it shows that it's legitimate, okay. If not, it ought to be dismantled. That's anarchism.
Okay. Now, what is considered legitimate authority?
It's the task of those who have the authority to demonstrate that. So, for example, suppose I'm taking a walk with my granddaughter and she runs out into the street, okay, and I grab her and pull her back. Well, that's authority, and it's my task to demonstrate that it's legitimate. And I think in this case, if anybody challenged me, I could make an argument saying that's legitimate.
That's the basics of the philosophy of it, and from that grows the movement, the tradition of libertarian socialism.
Yeah, the issue that anarcho-capitalists don't deal with is that if you get rid of all hierarchical structures in society to where you don't have any government, but then you set up these private businesses that don't have any tethers or completely unregulated, they are going to become those hierarchical structures. They're going to be the ones that have sole control over society. And yeah, we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Monopolies
the domination between the employer and the employee is one of the main. You spend a third of your life at the workplace. A third of your life is under the domination of the boss.
Yeah,
it's not even addressed. And not only is that not addressed with anarcho-capitalism, but that's intensified by removing any rights you have as an employee.
Yeah, it's a self-defeating ideology. You get rid of the hierarchical structures to create new hierarchical structures that are probably going to be more oppressive.
Untethered structures.
Untethered hierarchical structures. I mean, and just ask yourself, probably 90% of people, what has been the more oppressive hierarchical structure in your life? Has it been, and I'm not talking about big things, just small things, issues you've had. Is it with companies you've worked for and bosses and their imposition of rules, and you have to be here, you have to work overtime, we're not going to give you the raise, we're going to cut your benefits? Or is it the government where, hey, we're going to take this section out of your paycheck each week, you're going to at least see most of it in social programs, roads, schools. We're going to drop a bomb or two here and there. But for me, it's definitely been from private companies that I've had to work for.
Sure.
And ones I haven't had to work for. I mean, local electric company. They can be kind of oppressive, and where do you go?
Well, in a democratic society, the government is supposed to be the people.
Yeah.
The more democratic the society, the more that's true. Obviously, we can just work to make the government more democratic. Just getting rid of the government and letting Jeff Bezos have his way with the country is a terrible idea. It's just a terrible idea. There's no unionization. So what libertarian socialism basically is, this is, you can say worker co-ops. It gets more nitty-gritty than that. But worker co-ops are unionized, and instead of, for example, we talked earlier about $1 being one vote in a capitalist society. In a libertarian socialist society, one person, one vote. And in actuality, one stakeholder, one vote. So not only is everybody working at the steel mill get a vote, including the janitor, including the customer, because the customer is a stakeholder, including everybody in the society, because they're also stakeholders in the pollution that company puts out. This forms the basis of libertarian socialism, or anarcho-syndicalism, whatever you want to call it. Very old tradition.